And we should be now on the air. Good evening. It's Wednesday, May 17th, and we're here talking about some storms that are going to happen in the next few days in Virginia. I'm Chris White here in Roanoke, and have my normal partner in crime, Andrew Smith, who's located in Richmond, chasing for CBS 6 there. And I actually chase also for WDBJ 7 here in Roanoke. And we're fortunate to be joined tonight by the chief meteorologist of that station, WDBJ 7, Brent Watts. How are you tonight, Brent?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me on tonight. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Brent.
Yeah, we thought we'd have somebody that's actually used to being on camera here, so make things look better, you know?
Oh, no. You guys look great.
So we're going to look at some things here on the, if I can pull up the right screen here, on the situation or the setup that's coming up. And let me do the screen share. And come on now. Of course, my mouse isn't going to work right. Come on, here we go. Alrighty. So we will pull this up. Let me know when you guys can see that.
There it is.
All right, you're good.
Okay. So this is the WPC Weather Prediction Center setup. Looking at the surface fronts, I think this is Saturday morning at 12Z. So what's happening? We have this nice hot and humid air mass. Those of you that haven't felt it, if you haven't stepped outside today, you will. That's going to be replaced by a front that's going to push through a Friday night, late Friday afternoon and night, and we're going to talk about that in detail. And you can see the high pressure over eastern Canada is going to start a wedge process starting Saturday morning. So the weekend will be a little bit cooler until that wedge front starts lifting back up to the north and northeast on Sunday. And then another front, which you can kind of see bisecting the nation out here in the plains, will be coming through on Monday sometime in may or may not hang up in the area here. So we've got some chances for showers and storms that are coming up. Just to kind of show a little bit about what we've got here, I've got the 3-kilometer NAM up, and this is just the reflectivities. And you can see, let's get over here to tomorrow afternoon. This is Thursday at 3 o'clock. And there's a lot of capping in the atmosphere, but what's actually happening is the convection is going to start firing along the ridge lines, along the Blue Ridge, because there's a tremendous amount of instability. Not a lot of shears we'll talk about, but a lot of instability. So there'll be some updrafts going up. And then you see they'll move out a little bit to the east and then start petering out because there's just not enough support, and the cap probably is going to hold pretty strongly over the Piedmont further east. Well, then we kind of forward it to later in Friday. Here we have Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Front starting to sag south, and then we see stuff firing up here in northern Virginia and kind of scooting down the I-64 corridor. So that's going to be the activity that's happening Friday on that end of things. So let me stop sharing here. Go back. So what, from your perspective, Andrew, what do you have going on from the Richmond area?
You kind of nailed it there. Thursday's tomorrow afternoon's looking very capped and not very conducive to storms. In fact, I was just looking at the 3K NAM, and it's struggling to even fire anything off the Blue Ridge tomorrow afternoon. So that could possibly even be a hit or miss situation. But for sure here in Richmond, it's going to just be a hot, humid afternoon. The last I checked, Cape values here in the afternoon are going to be close to 2,500 perhaps, which that's what you're starting to see, what you want to see in the summertime around here, and what you're expecting to see. So the energy is going to be there, but unfortunately, there's not going to be enough to keep it going. But Friday afternoon, it has a lot more juice in the atmosphere here. And it shows, like you said, the storms kind of firing in the northwestern part of the state, working their way southeast. So that's very chaseable, especially if you can catch them up in like the Orange County area and start following them southeast. Got to deal a little bit with the woodlands and Spotsylvania around the lake up there. But it's one of the more positive chasing routes that I have around here, because that keeps me away from having to deal with the rivers heading northeast when storms track from southwest and northeast. If I can keep them on a peninsula, that's a very positive track for me.
Right. Yeah, you got the situation there in the eastern part of the state where the rivers really widen out, and there's very few bridges that you can deal with. So yeah, I fully understand that. So
yeah, and in fact, working where I have been working this last week, I've been scouting out all the chase terrain down there, so it's been kind of handy.
yeah, that's always good to get your foot in the door before you actually have to go chasing in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So Brent, from your perspective, I know you have to forecast this stuff. What are you looking at in your DMA?
Yeah, well, just looking at some of the same models that you guys are looking at, we have some proprietary models too that come in, and it's very similar on just about all of them tomorrow with the progression of development during the afternoon, mainly along the ridge lines. Those mountains really helping to lift that air and cause some of those storms to form. It looked like, anytime after 2, 3 o'clock starting to develop, and then they just kind of drift off toward the east. Wouldn't expect, a lot of rotation with these, but certainly could have some hail with them, a couple, some gusty winds, but, and maybe some pulsing storms too. But I don't see them lasting much after dark.
Right. Yeah, I think between the loss of heating and the capping, I think you're right. They're gonna go up. And the other part too, as we mentioned, there's not a lot of shear. So these storms typically, without a lot of shear, will go straight up and straight back down.
Right. They'll just collapse on themselves. Right.
Right. So I think the pulse storms are tomorrow. Although some of them you can get a severe thunderstorm warning off of one of them if it collapses with enough intensity and the wind picks up.
Yeah.
And of course, as you mentioned, with the hail in place, with these kind of CAPE values, some of the model CAPE values I've been looking at over the next couple of days have been, 2,500, some of them over 3,000. That's plenty CAPE to cause an updraft to really get up there pretty tall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you can sustain an updraft around here with 2,500, 3,000, you can at least get some golf balls out of that, I would think.
Yeah, especially with this kind of setup. So let's move ahead a little bit to Friday and talk about the front that's coming in. I've got some stuff showing up, some stuff I could show up. But let me just pull this one graphic here, which is the SPC's Day 3 outlook for severe weather. And if you guys can see that.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. At the moment, they just have a marginal risk peaking into Virginia, just about over the I-81 corridor up to about the Charlottesville area, and then kind of goes back to the west. Everybody else is under general thunder. That's of course Day 3. When we get to Day 2 and Day 1, my thoughts are right now that marginal risk area will probably extend east across Virginia once they reach the criteria there. With the lack of shear, even with this front dropping down, that may not be any higher risk than that. But does anybody else have any models they want to pull up to talk about Friday?
Let's see.
I'm trying to pull some things here. Just kind of going what you're looking at. I'll show you the shear values here.
But I do feel like they'll expand that to pretty much the entire state, look more of a marginal risk. I just feel like each day that, the dew points are going to go up, it's going to get a little bit more soupy. And, each day it's going to become more, a better coverage of storms and more widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, looking here, like the 0 to 6 shear is virtually non-existent around here this is looking right now. This thing keeps resetting on me. So for Friday right at 8 o'clock, 0Z, it's all up to the north, up in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Down here, little pockets, if you're lucky, of 20 to 30. And then if you look at helicity, switch over here. Once again, not a whole lot. Whatever helicity is there is pretty much being caused by the storms themselves and not due to the atmospheric conditions in place. So again, rotation is going to be a tough thing to come by, but not to say a updraft can't get a little bit of spin just to sustain itself for a little bit, but certainly nothing of a ballistic attitude or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, and this is typical of what I have seen in late summer. In fact, this looks like a summertime pattern with this kind of CAPE and not a lot of shear. Sometimes, and this is the big unknown until we get closer and get some little more fine-grained models involved. Sometimes when a front, especially a weak front like this that comes through, it provides enough of a shear zone that with this kind of CAPE, that once a storm hits that shear zone, it can easily spin up at the low levels, even though the deep layer shear may not be much. You can get a brief wall cloud or even a funnel spin up because you've got that much energy, uplifting and pulling the air up. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And the other thing to keep an eye out on Friday too is outflow boundaries. Obviously if these storms are going up and then collapsing because of lack of shear, you get a couple of outflow boundaries. They can provide a low level shear zone too. So that area you were mentioning, Andrew, up there, kind of north and west of Richmond, it's probably going to be a good area to start out in. I may even wander over toward Appomattox, Buckingham, Fluvanna counties in that area, depending on how things set up on Friday.
Yeah, get yourself some good north routes to check out anything that meanders down that way.
Right. Yeah. So if I get out of Brent's DMA, maybe I'll send reports into Channel 6 in Richmond.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just looking at what you were looking at earlier, the 3 kilometer NAM, I mean, that's kind of an area. It looks like a hot spot there coming up Friday and then into Saturday too.
Right. Now, there had been some disagreements of the models on Saturday as to actually how far the front was going to push, how far south it was going to. They seem to be, at least the GFS and the NAM seem to be coming together and showing it pushing all the way down into the southwest corner of the state. Is that what you're seeing, Brent?
Yeah, so that's what I was just looking at right now. It looks like it puts it pretty close pretty close to the southwestern portion. It kind of drapes down in toward the Outer Banks. And then of course you got the other front that's coming in late in the weekend, early next week. But yeah, I mean, it looks like it on this one that I'm looking at, it brings it almost all the way through. But then some of the others I was looking at too, it doesn't have it even coming quite far enough to the Virginia, North Carolina border. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's something with that energy, and again, that as Andrew and I've talked before, these wedge fronts, as you call them, we call them backdoor cold fronts. They have robbed him of a lot of opportunities of chasing in the Richmond area, but but in this part of the state, it can make it exciting depending on if it sets up in an area that's actually enough east of the mountains where it's a decent chase setup. It can provide a good shear zone there as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been frustrating sitting here multiple days just watching storms get that northwest southeast flow pattern, just train across the southwestern part of the state, and I'm just sitting here in the soupy, foggy mess and freezing, feeling kind of chilly and knowing it's 80 degrees not too far from me. Those are the frustrating days for me.
Yeah, I think they're frustrating for all of us, depending on where you go and how you set up. So I think to kind of recap, Thursday there may be some pop-up storms that I may or may not get on. Thinking about maybe heading up to the Bedford County area along 460 not to go too far east because I think the storms will dissipate quickly. Mm-hmm. Friday we have the setup with things going up along, coming down from the northwest, probably going up near the I-64 corridor, on both sides of it. Saturday with the wedge, we really don't know exactly where that's going to set up yet. We probably need to get a little bit closer. But how about Sunday? What do things look like on Sunday to you guys?
Let's see, Sunday. Sunday, I had seen almost a similar pattern. We're still kind of locked in with the wedge a bit, and it didn't have quite as the ones that I was looking at the some of the NAMs, also one of the GFS, and it pulls a couple of showers and storms in during the afternoon, just a peak heating of the day. But I mean, it doesn't appear to me. It appears to be we're still in that wedge pattern, kind of cool and a little more stable on Sunday. But I think as that other front approaches from the west, I think that's when it will start to lift a little bit more, and we'll start to get a little more unstable. But Sunday, I mean, right now from what I see, I don't see a whole lot of instability and a whole lot of severe potential.
Right, that's kind of what I was saying too. And depending on, of course, you can't really trust the models on how quickly the wedge is going to get scoured out because they're almost always wrong in the timing. Right. But it could be. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just looking at the GFS, I mean, it has dew points sitting in the 50s Sunday morning, and then by Sunday evening, at least here in Central Virginia, dew points are pushing near 70. So, and pushing up into the 60s all the way into Pennsylvania. So I've never seen the wedge retreat that fast before to go from Southwest Virginia to Pennsylvania in a day. So I think the GFS is being a little overly ambitious in how quickly that'll retreat. Excuse me.
Retreat, right? Yeah, well, I agree too. And so, if there's some kind of happy medium in there where it does start retreating, but it doesn't get completely out of the state, that could provide you with some instability and shear closer to your area there, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it sets up, I would say if you took the halfway point into that and be a little more realistic, it would be somewhere along the 460 corridor, 64 corridor, maybe as far north as Fredericksburg. So it would be certainly something to keep an eye on, because then you got that frontal boundary there where if a storm rides right along it, it could pick something up.
Yeah, we saw that happen last week, didn't we, Brent?
Yes, we did. Yeah, those like the sneak up. Yeah, I tell you, that was definitely impressive when those things came through last week.
Yeah, I I wasn't prepared to even chase that day. I forget what else was going on, but when I saw that signature, that blow up happened, I guess it was just east of Lynchburg, and yep. it just kept going right along the front, and it was impressive. It really was.
It was, yeah. I mean, literally follow that front all the way down. That one was tornado warned. I don't think there were any. I think there was no tornadoes confirmed, but certainly some wind, just some wind gust damage along that line. But yeah, it was pretty clear on radar that there was rotation there.
Yeah, that hook echo and the velocity couplet was impressive, and
yeah.
And I think it was the next day, if I remember right, the front was still hanging around, and I actually chased a cell kind of along the same path that had some rotation, had a couplet on, but it was just the visibility was so murky, and the roads were so hemmed in by trees. I never got a good look at the base, but it basically was the same kind of setup. A cell goes up, uses the shear zone on the front, and just rides right along it.
Right. Yeah. And that was Chris. Was that the same morning that we had some storms that produced that Manita tornado?
That could have been. I'd have to go back and look, but
yeah, I think it might have, because I think we had some storms in the morning, and then the afternoon they started to fire up again.
I think that was the week before. I forget what setup that was coming through.
Yeah.
Was that May 5th? The Manita tornado?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that one must be. Yes. Yeah, that was May. That had to have been the week before. Yes.
That was the day all the small tornadoes kept spawning up everywhere. I don't think there's anything higher than an EF1 throughout the state, but there's at least, I think, 9 reported.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Because I remember those. They were early morning. I do remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that setup had some of the nicest couplets I've ever seen on radar around here. I mean, they didn't last more than a frame or two, but I mean, they were very well defined, which is something you don't see on the velocity scan around here very often. So it kind of surprised me, especially to be that early in the morning around here.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Exactly. And also along those lines, I was just looking at my notes back here. It was last Thursday, the 11th, that I went out chasing. We had some storms around. I chased that one. It was Wednesday night when the tornado warning storm went down the front, and then Thursday is when I chased the other storms. Just a little note. I just looked at something before the broadcast about those May 5th storms. If you go to the NWS Blacksburg page, Brent, mm-hmm. and look up their storm reports, they actually have the Manita tornado listed as in Rockingham County, North Carolina.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I just emailed them about an hour ago and said, hey, you might want to change that on your website.
Oh, jeez.
I noticed something weird on that day with all the storm reports. They came in on the wrong day. At least a lot of the tornado reports in Wakefield somehow came in the day before. They didn't show up as being on that day. I don't know what happened there, and I don't know if they fixed it. I haven't looked back at it recently.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, because I kept looking like in the afternoon to see the tornado reports from that morning. They weren't there, but if I went to the day before's storm reports, they were all populating there. And
right.
I was just trying to do the Z time in my head. Is like, even that doesn't make sense, like the rollover from previous day to current day. So I don't know if they fixed it. I haven't looked back to see if they have or not, but it's just something strange I noticed that afternoon.
Yeah, let me, I'll just go share this real quick. This is from my chase log from last Thursday. And this is the storm I was following. You can see the couplet on it there. And it looks like that you ought to be able to just have a really great view of it, but everything was murky, overcast was low, and all you could get was a glimpse every now and then of the base. And in the right-hand velocity frame there, when we got that close, we were actually getting dumped on with rain. Couldn't see anything. So my chase partner, I had to tell him to stop at one point because according to radar scope and what I was seeing out the window, we were really close to a very nasty hail shaft.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one, Chris. Yeah, and you're right. You're like, hey, right, this is the strong one right here. It was tough to even see because it was there was so much. It was just, yeah, you're right. It was just kind of that murky, just humid, nasty, rainy looking. No real well defined view of it from any perspective, really.
Well, exactly. And Andrew knows. He and I've been out on some warm fronts out west. The same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the structure you would think on radar looks great, and you get up next to it, and it's like, ew, can't see anything.
Right.
Yeah, it's Grunge Fest.
Yeah, yeah, that was our nickname for it. So, and to move just ahead, if depending on how things develop over the weekend, we may want to revisit on Monday. But for Monday's setup, I don't have anything other than the GFS that I can check out there. It looks like it's bringing that next cold front through fairly early in the day. What do you see on your models there, Brent?
Yeah, so we had a couple models that go out that far out as Monday, and it does look like an early arrival, early part of the day. And it looks like it should be out of here, by late afternoon, early evening across the entire state. There's some. There may be some instability with it, but again, coming in that early in the day with the temperatures so low, and then the cloud, if we have any leftover clouds from the weekend, that would certainly help us out too. So, if anything changes on the timing and it comes in during the afternoon, it could be, a different story. But right now, from what I'm seeing, it's coming in mostly the first half of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Andrew, I'll toss it over to you. You may be able to get something out of this on a late afternoon chase over your way.
Right.
Yeah, just pulling up the GFS, looking at timing. At 18Z, it looks like the front's sitting right on the 95 corridor. So that's on the early window of getting your daytime instability in there, daytime heating to get things cooking. So, if it slows up just the tiniest bit, you might be able to play it a little bit, but it would be an early play and probably wouldn't be enough to get the atmosphere really primed around here for any kind of significant activity. But it'd be certainly something to keep an eye on if the front can slow down just by a couple hours or so. Right.
And come to think of it, I did read, it may have been in Wakefield's forecast discussion today. They'd mentioned something about the Euro model was developing a front, developing a little wrinkle, a low along that front. It might cause it to slow down. So that's something to watch as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's going to be, it looks like there will be instability building up the front from North Carolina in the range of about maybe 1,500 to 2,000, but it doesn't, at least now, it doesn't want it to get into Virginia very far. To 1,000 surface-based Cape up towards the Richmond area. So even, if timing's right, it looks like the deep instability is going to be having trouble making it far enough north to really trigger anything. But it's certainly something worth keeping an eye on for sure.
Right. Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that. I'm busy pretty much all day Sunday, so I'll have to watch the models late Sunday night and see what things look like before because for me to go to that side of the state, it's a pretty big commitment if there's not going to be a lot going on. So.
There looks like there'll be a little more shear at play that day too. So if you can get a little more shear, the Cape won't be quite as much of a deal breaker. But again, nothing significant. But when you look at that chart of Cape and shear, you're starting to get yourself a little more towards the center here.
Right. So we're nowhere near as ballistic as the setups are in the plains right now. We had talked about some of our Hokie Storm Chase alumni are out there chasing right now, and they caught a tornado yesterday, and it looks like tomorrow there's going to be really strong setup in northwest Oklahoma and southwest Kansas. So I will wish them a lot of luck and safety as well.
Yeah, southwest Kansas has been a magical spot.
Hey, Pratt, Kansas is my favorite spot.
Yeah, some of the hail coming in from those storms are huge. I'm just, we've been showing some of the pictures of the hail and some of the damage, just impressive out there.
Yeah,
I haven't even looked. What's the Cape values been out there for these setups? I can imagine they've probably been a little high.
Oh, 3,000 plus, easily, easily. And of course, as we know from being out there, Andrew, there's a lot broader area for the storms to gather strength in, especially if they're discrete. And they just get so much bigger than they do around here.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different ball game out there, and you always have to adjust yourself when you come back here to chase the small setups here. But it's still worth it,
Yeah, they can still cause damage around here. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes, because people, when you're not used to dealing with that kind of weather, you don't know how to prepare for it when it's coming in. Even if it's just a small storm, it still catches you off guard, just with the gusty winds and even small hail can do decent damage, at least to plants and stuff like that around here. So
we had that. Let's see, it was down in North Carolina, and down towards Eden, and there was some storm damage down there, and people swore that it was a tornado. It had to be a tornado, and of course they did the assessment. It was straight line wind damage, and the winds were estimated as strong, if not stronger, than a tornado, than some of the weaker tornadoes. So I think people get this idea in their head that they have to see a tornado for, or that it has to be any kind of damage has to be a tornado. It has to be a tornado, and trying to debunk that is really, really tough. That even just a regular thunder, a severe thunderstorm can produce almost the same wind speeds as a tornado.
I agree. And in fact, I wrote a rant on my blog last week sometime about something like that. And basically, as I've experienced, I'm sure Andrew has seen this too, the public, the people that we see when we're out chasing, the public doesn't pay much attention to severe thunderstorm warnings. It's just another thunderstorm. And the fact is, that the winds and the hail in a severe thunderstorm can cause a lot of damage. It doesn't have to be a tornado, like you said, Brent. Yeah.
Well, and the other misconception is that a severe thunderstorm won't or can't produce a tornado, which is that's one of the criteria for a severe thunderstorm. So I think, a lot of times people will hear it's not gonna be a tornado. It's just a severe thunderstorm. Well, I mean, that's your first step to getting a tornado warning, is you got to have a strong storm. So, I mean, I think that's the other thing that people need to realize and respect the fact that if a storm is strong enough, it could certainly produce a tornado, whether it's tornado warned or not.
Exactly, especially with the storms we have around here. That's where the majority of our tornadoes come from. Those weak tornadoes, the EF0s, the EF1s, will quickly pop out of one of those kind of storms without a lot of warning.
Right.
And especially out for you guys out there, dealing with the old myth that tornadoes can't happen in valleys or mountains block them and things like that. I hear that repeated all the time still. And that's one of those you smash your head into your desk because you're just so frustrated dealing with it. But we've seen plenty of examples, especially in Southwest Virginia in the last 5 years or so, of tornadoes that happen in valleys, go literally churning up a mountain, things like that. So it'd be nice if we could squash that myth too.
Yeah, I think we still have a lot of education to do, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, guys, anything else that you can think of to talk about the next few days? Something we haven't touched on, or a factor we need to think about?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, I think just at least here in the eastern part of the state, keeping an eye on Monday, because that's just going to have, if it can congeal right, have a little better of both worlds in terms of shear and well, maybe not instability, but a little more shear. The next couple of days will certainly be the Cape systems and dealing with that. So I'll be keeping my eyes on Monday, especially with the front coming through. The forcing ought to be nice with that as well. So we'll see.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think we've kind of beat this horse to death for the moment. And, if need be, if things really intensify and Monday or sometime next week looks more ballistic than it does right now, we will revisit this at some point. But for the moment, I think we're going to sign off and we'll call this a night.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good one.
All right. You bet.